enjoyable as his companionship on a good walk. Well now, in the view of many country lovers, one of the greatest acts of official vandalism ever perpetrated was the ripping up of the small railway lines back in the 60s. Often they cut through some of the most stunning landscape and beautiful scenery you could hope to look at. The original builders of these lines, faced with awesome natural barriers, managed to construct some of the great engineering marvels of the Victorian era. The most famous survivor of Dr. Beeching's 60s scalpel is the line from Carlisle to Leeds, the Settle in Carlisle. Stations such as Appleby would be nothing but a distant memory if it hadn't been for the grit and determination of the local people. But a 50-yard walk from Appleby station brings you to a more sombre sight. Appleby East was once a thriving stop on the route that linked Darlington with the west coast, the Stainmore line. Scores of holiday trains would pass this way on a summer Saturday, bound for Blackpool or the lakes. Today, only the ghosts remain, together with the thunder of the traffic on the A66. But for Peter Walton, one of the key figures in saving the Settle and Carlisle line, history can repeat itself.
It was the highest mainline railway in England, crossed Stainmore summit at 1,370 feet above sea level.
And why was it built?
It was built to bring Durham coke across to the west coast of Cumbria. There was the added advantage in as much as the Durham area required high quality iron ore as well, so the trains never ran empty. Coke to the west, iron ore to the east. Millions of passengers used it during its lifetime. Perhaps the most famous breed of passenger were northeasterners going on their annual spring holiday to Blackpool, and they came over Stainmore on this railway.
Now, what sort of structures did they have to build along the way? Presumably the most incredibly difficult would be actually over the mountains themselves, over the hills themselves.
The gorge here at Beela was the most notable obstruction, and Beela Viaduct, which was built over this gorge, was the highest railway bridge in England at 196 feet high, and it was a terrific engineering feat.
Can you describe the viaduct?
I can indeed, yes. It was like an exiled Big Dipper from Blackpool's Pleasure Beach, just stuck on the hillside, twinkling in the sun. It could be seen for miles.
Who designed it?
Thomas Booch.
Now that name is familiar, isn't it?
It is indeed. He had the unfortunate distinction of also designing the original Tay Bridge, which, as you well know, ended up in disaster.
There can't have been anything much like it as a bit of industrial archaeology anywhere in the world.
I would have said not. No, this was unique.
But despite that, they pulled it down.
A dreadful business indeed, yes.
What happened?
The line closed in January 1962, and as soon as this closure had taken place, demolition of the route began, and Beela Viaduct itself was dismantled in July and August of 1963. There were protests at the time, but to no avail, unfortunately.
That's what I was going to say. How on earth did they get away with it?
I'm sure that they would not get away with it now. But in those days, I think a change in transport policy meant that anything to do with the roadway system automatically took priority, and I think there was a genuine fear at the time that this railway could perhaps have been reopened had the structures remained. So I think it was in the interests of the people of the day to, or should I say the government of the day, to demolish the railway and its viaducts.
Now you formed a group with the incredible object of reopening this line. How realistic a plan is that?
We're deadly serious. This would be the most prestigious preserved railway in this country. It would involve extensive rebuilding of the missing structures, which is a task in itself, but all of this project has been carefully analysed and costed, and we feel that it's definitely possible. It would be our intention to completely rebuild Beela so that aesthetically it appeared as it always was, but it would be built from more modern, more suitable materials.
Would you still buy your steel from Middlesbrough?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would for Middlesbrough, I'm sure.
Yes, that would be nice.
It's very hard on a beautiful day like today with the sun shining and everything else and the birds singing to try to imagine what it must have been like to travel on this line in the winter. But I know there's a beautiful piece of black and white film I've seen, Snowdrift on Bleak Gill, which really tells you what it was like, really shows you what it was like.
Pretty fierce, yes.
It was about 5 a.m. on Thursday, the 24th of February, when the operating department heard that the 4:20 a.m. goods was stuck in a heavy drift in Bleak Gill. Motive power sent in 2 engines and 2 heavy plows, but conditions were still bad, and the plows got stuck too. The train was reached at about 3 p.m. on the Monday, 4 days after it was first stranded. And that, you might think, was that, but it wasn't.
This wasn't the most famous occasion when this sort of thing occurred. One stage a train was buried there for nearly 8 weeks, I seem to remember.
What would it mean to you to see the line reopened?
I think this would be just fantastic. It would be fantastic for the railway enthusiast fraternity, but it would be even more notable for the local population in this area. It would revitalise the Upper Eden Valley's economy. It would provide all year round jobs and associated prosperity.
You talk about it once being the only way the people of the North East could get to Blackpool for their holidays. Would they still do that, do you think?
Well, the current proposal is only to rebuild a part of this route, but it would be absolutely marvellous in the fullness of time if North Eastern holidaymakers once again could come across Stainmore soon.
Peter Walton and his plan to restore the Stainmore Railway.